The chamber was electric, charged with anticipation that crackled through the air like static before a storm. Every eye was fixed, every camera lens primed to capture the moment when two titans of American politics would collide. Attorney General Pan Pondi sat poised, her expression a mask of polished confidence, the kind that had been honed over years of wielding power with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. Across from her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett radiated a different kind of strength, quiet, unyielding. Forged in the fires of struggle and resilience, the room was no stranger to heated exchanges, but tonight felt different. The stakes were higher, the tension palpable. This wasn't just another political sparring match. It was a battle for the soul of justice itself. Pondi, with her sharp tongue and sharper smirk, was ready to dismiss any challenge with the arrogance of someone who believed the system was hers to command. Crockett, on the other hand, carried the weight of generations in her gaze, a promise that she would not be silenced or sidelined. As the debate began, Pondi wasted no time. Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade, dripping with condescension. "Congresswoman Crockett," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "Your calls for accountability are nothing more than grandstanding by those desperate for attention. This isn't a stage for theatrics. It's a forum for serious leadership." The words landed like a slap, sharp and deliberate. The cameras caught every flicker of reaction, the tightening of Crockett's jaw, the steadying of her breath. But she did not respond immediately. Instead, she held Pondi's gaze with a calm so intense it seemed to still the very air. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until it became a force in itself. The narrator's voice settled in, low and deliberate. In that moment, the chamber held its breath. This was no ordinary exchange. This was a reckoning. Pondi's smirk deepened, mistaking silence for submission. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming with the certainty of power. "You may have passion, Congresswoman, but passion without discipline is chaos. Leadership demands order, not emotion." But Crockett's silence was not weakness. It was a gathering storm, a quiet before the inevitable. Her eyes burned with a fire that spoke of battles fought in courtrooms, communities, and in the hearts of those who had been told they didn't belong. She was not here to be diminished. She was here to dismantle. The tension in the room was suffocating. Staffers shifted nervously, journalists scribbled furiously, and millions watching from home leaned closer, sensing that something historic was unfolding. Pondi's allies exchanged confident glances, certain the moment was theirs. Crockett's supporters held their breath, knowing the storm was about to break. The narrator's voice sharpened. This was a clash of worlds: entitlement versus endurance, arrogance versus authenticity. To understand the magnitude of this confrontation, one must look beyond the chamber walls, beyond the polished speeches and pointed jabs. This was a battle rooted in history, in the ongoing struggle for justice and representation. Pan Pondi's rise had been marked by privilege and power, a carefully curated image of invincibility. Her dismissals of critics were not mere tactics. They were a pattern, a shield forged in the fires of entitlement. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's journey was the story of resilience. Born into communities often overlooked and underestimated, she had clawed her way through barriers with grit and grace. Her law career was defined by fighting for the marginalized, the voiceless, the forgotten. Her seat in Congress was not a gift, but a hard-won victory for those who saw in her a reflection of their own. Struggles and hopes, the contrast could not have been starker. Pondi, the embodiment of polished power, wielding her office like a weapon to silence dissent. Crockett, the embodiment of persistent truth, ready to shatter the illusion of invulnerability. The narrator's voice deepened. Tonight, the chamber was not just a stage. It was a battleground where history would be written. As Pondi pressed her advantage, the words sharp and unyielding, Crockett remained composed. The room felt the shift, the tide turning. Pondi's dismissals, once so sure, began to falter under the weight of Crockett's silent defiance. The arrogance that had once seemed impenetrable now looked brittle, exposed. And then the moment came. Crockett leaned forward, her voice steady but charged with undeniable power. "Attorney General Pondi," she began, "speak of discipline and order as if they belong only to those who have never been silenced. But true leadership is not about maintaining power. It's about lifting up those who have been pushed down." The chamber erupted. The applause was thunderous, a wave of affirmation that swept through the room and spilled into the hearts of millions watching. Crockett's words were not just a rebuttal. They were a declaration. A promise that the era of arrogance cloaked in authority was coming to an end. Pondi's smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone could see it. Crockett was no longer just a challenger. She was a force. The narrator's voice closed the scene with gravitas. In the clash between arrogance and dignity, the true victor was clear. And the nation was watching. The chamber's energy had shifted palpably. The air now thick with anticipation and a sense of inevitability. Jasmine Crockett's words had landed like a thunderclap, reverberating far beyond the marble walls and polished desks. Attorney General Pan Pondi, once the embodiment of unshakable authority, now sat visibly rattled. Her carefully constructed and beginning to crack under the weight of truth. Pondi's supporters exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence waning as the momentum swung decisively toward Crockett. The Attorney General, known for her sharp retorts and unyielding posture, found herself momentarily disarmed. The room, once a theater for her dominance, was now a stage for a reckoning. The narrator's voice cut through the charged silence. Power, when wielded without accountability, breeds arrogance. But when confronted with resilience, it reveals its fragility. Crockett's journey to this moment was not one of happenstance. It was the culmination of years spent navigating systems designed to exclude her and those she represented. Her silence before speaking was a strategic pause, a gathering of strength that transformed her response into a seismic event. She was not merely defending herself. She was speaking for millions who had been marginalized, dismissed, and silenced as Crockett continued. Her voice grew firmer, each word carefully chosen to dismantle Pondi's narrative. "You speak of leadership as if it is a privilege reserved for the few. But leadership is a responsibility, a sacred trust bestowed by the people. It is earned through service, sacrifice. It's an unwavering commitment to justice." The chamber responded with a mixture of applause and stunned silence. Some lawmakers nodded in agreement, others shifted uncomfortably. Recognizing the undeniable truth in Crockett's declaration, the cameras captured every nuance, the flicker of doubt in Pondi's eyes, the resolute calm in Crockett's. Pondi attempted to regain control, her voice rising with practiced authority. "Congresswoman, your passion is noted, but passion without pragmatism leads to chaos. Governance requires balance, experience, and a steady hand." But Crockett was undeterred. "Experience," she countered, "is not measured by tenure or titles alone. It is measured by the impact of one's actions on the lives of the people. And I stand here today because I have fought tirelessly for those whose voices have been ignored." The contrast between the two women could not have been more stark. Pondi, the polished politician, clinging to the trappings of power. Crockett, the relentless advocate, embodying the hopes and struggles of everyday Americans. The narrator's voice deepened. This was more than a debate. It was a battle for the soul of democracy. Outside the chamber, the nation watched with rapt attention. Social media exploded with reactions, hashtags trending within minutes. Hashtag Crockett Pondi became a rallying cry, a symbol of resistance against arrogance and entitlement. Clips of Crockett's speech were shared millions of times, each replay reinforcing her message of dignity and defiance. Political analysts scrambled to interpret the moment. Some framed it as a turning point in the national conversation about leadership and accountability. Others saw it as a reflection of a broader cultural shift to demand for authenticity over artifice, for courage over complacency. In the midst of the storm, Crockett remained composed. Her eyes never wavered from Pondi's, her posture unwavering. She was the embodiment of a new kind of leadership, one rooted in empathy, courage, and an unshakable commitment to justice. The narrator's voice softened. Reflective, in the face of arrogance, resilience shines brightest. And in that chamber, Jasmine Crockett became a beacon. As the debate drew to a close, the impact of Crockett's words lingered. Pondi's attempts to respond fell flat, her usual sharpness dulled by the undeniable force of Crockett's truth. The chamber, once a battleground, now felt like a turning point. The aftermath was immediate and profound. Grassroots organizations mobilized, inspired by Crockett's courage. Fundraising surged, and communities across the country organized watch parties to relive the moment. The debate was no longer just a political event. It was a movement. The narrator's voice rose with conviction. When one voice refuses to be silenced, it ignites a chorus. And that chorus can change the course of history. For Crockett, the victory was not personal, it was collective. It was a testament to the power of persistence, the strength of community, and the unyielding demand for justice. Her words were a call to action, a reminder that true leadership belongs to those who serve, not those who dominate. The chamber lights dimmed, but the echoes of that night would resonate for years to come. The debate had ended, but the fight for dignity, respect, and accountability was just beginning. The narrator closed with a note of hope in the clash. Between arrogance and resilience, the future belongs to those who dare to stand, to speak, and to lead with integrity. The chamber had settled into a tense quiet now, but the reverberations of Jasmine Crockett's words continued to pulse through the room like an electric current. Attorney General Pan Pondi, once so assured, now sat with a subtle but unmistakable shift in demeanor. The polished veneer of control was cracking, revealing the vulnerability beneath the armor of entitlement. Crockett's measured yet powerful response had done more than silence an opponent. It had exposed a deeper truth about power, privilege, and the urgent need for change. The debate was no longer about policy points or political posturing. It had become a mirror reflecting the fractures in the very foundation of leadership. The narrator's voice, steady and resonant, filled the space. When authority forgets its purpose, it becomes a hollow echo. But when courage speaks, it shatters silence and demands reckoning. To fully grasp the significance of this moment, one must understand the forces that shaped both women. Pan Pondi's rise was a story of privilege meticulously maintained. From elite schools to influential networks, her path was paved with advantages that insulated her from the struggles faced by many she governed. Her confidence was born not just from competence, but from a system that rewarded conformity and punished dissent. Her tenure as Attorney General was marked by a pattern of dismissiveness toward those who challenged her. Critics were labeled as troublemakers, activists as agitators, and journalists as biased. This strategy had kept her firmly in control, but it also bred resentment and distrust. Pondi's arrogance was not merely personal, it was systemic, a symptom of power unchecked. In stark contrast, Jasmine Crockett's story was one of relentless perseverance. Raised in communities where opportunity was scarce and obstacles abundant, she learned early that survival required more than strength. It demanded resilience, empathy, and an unbreakable spirit. Her legal career was dedicated to fighting for those left behind by the system. And her political ascent was fueled by a grassroots movement, hungry for authentic representation. The narrator's tone softened, imbued with respect. Crockett's journey was not handed to her. It was earned through sacrifice, struggle, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Inside the chamber, the contrast between the two women was a living tableau of America's ongoing battle, between old power structures and emerging voices demanding change. Pondi's polished rhetoric clashed with Crockett's raw authenticity, creating a dynamic that captivated the nation. As the debate progressed, Pondi attempted to regain footing, launching into rehearsed defenses of her record. She spoke of law and order, of experience and stability, but her words rang hollow against the backdrop of Crockett's lived reality and unshakable conviction. Crockett responded not with anger, but with clarity. "Experience without empathy is a recipe for injustice," she said, her voice steady. "Leadership is not about preserving the status quo. It's about transforming it to serve all people, especially those who have been ignored for too long." The chamber erupted again, applause a testament to the power of truth spoken with dignity. Pondi's allies grew restless, sensing the tide had turned irreversibly. Outside, the nation was ablaze with reaction. Social media platforms became battlegrounds of their own, with supporters and critics alike dissecting every moment. But the overwhelming sentiment was one of admiration for Crockett's courage and composure. Political commentators hailed the exchange as a defining moment in the fight for equitable leadership. Some framed it as a generational shift, a passing of the torch from entrenched power to a new era of accountability and inclusion. The narrator's voice carried a note of cautious optimism in the crucible of conflict. New leaders are forged, and in that chamber, Jasmine Crockett was tempered into a symbol of hope. As the debate drew to a close, Crockett's final words lingered in the air, a challenge and a promise. "We are not here to maintain power for the few. We are here to build a future where every voice matters, where justice is not a privilege, but a right." The chamber was silent, the weight of her statement settling over all present. Pondi's silence was telling a tacit acknowledgement that the old guard had been confronted with an unstoppable force. The narrator concluded, with a powerful reflection, "The true measure of leadership is not in titles or tenure, but in the courage to stand for what is right." And tonight, that courage shone brighter than ever. The chamber's atmosphere remained charged long after the formal debate had ended. Jasmine Crockett's words had ignited something far beyond the walls of that room, a spark that was rapidly becoming a blaze of public consciousness. Attorney General Pan Pondi, once the unchallenged figure of authority, now faced a reckoning not just from Crockett, but from a nation awakening to the realities of power and privilege. The narrator's voice, rich with gravity, set the scene. When the powerful dismiss the voices of the people, they awaken a force that cannot be silenced. Tonight, that force was unleashed. Crockett's rise was emblematic of a broader movement sweeping across the country, a demand for leaders who reflect the diversity, struggles, and aspirations of the communities they serve. Her victory in this debate was not merely rhetorical, was symbolic of a shift in the political landscape, where authenticity and accountability were becoming the currency of leadership. Pondi's approach, steeped in entitlement and dismissiveness, represented the old guard's resistance to change. Her polished speeches and carefully crafted image had long masked a reluctance to confront systemic injustices. Crockett's unyielding presence and unwavering truth-telling pierced through that facade, exposing the cracks beneath. The narrator's tone grew reflective. Power without purpose is a hollow throne, and when that throne is challenged by truth, it trembles. In the days following the debate, the impact of Crockett's words rippled through every corner of society. Grassroots organizations found renewed energy. Activists amplified their calls for reform, and ordinary citizens felt emboldened to demand more from their leaders. The hashtags that trended during the debate evolved into movements, conversations, spilling from social media into town halls, classrooms, and living rooms. Political analysts noted a palpable shift in public sentiment. Polls showed rising approval for Crockett's approach and growing skepticism toward Pondi's leadership. The debate had crystallized a choice facing the nation: continue down a path of entrenched arrogance or embrace a future defined by empathy and justice. The narrator's voice carried a note of hope in the crucible of conflict. A new vision for leadership was forged, a vision where dignity and truth are the foundation. Crockett herself remained grounded amid the whirlwind. She understood that this moment was not an endpoint, but a beginning. The applause and accolades were affirmations of a collective yearning for change. But the real work lay ahead. Her message was clear. Leadership is not about personal triumph, but about lifting others. It is about standing with those who have been marginalized and ensuring their voices shape the future. The narrator's voice softened, inviting reflection. True leadership is a torch passed from one generation to the next, carried by those brave enough to walk through fire. As the nation absorbed the significance of that night, the question lingered: what comes next? The debate had exposed the fault lines in power, but it also illuminated a path forward, one paved by courage, resilience, and an unshakable commitment to justice. The chamber lights may have dimmed, but the fire ignited by Jasmine Crockett's words continued to burn brightly. Lighting the way for a new era of leadership, the narrator closed with a call to action. The story is far from over. It is now up to each of us to carry the torch, to demand leaders who serve with integrity, and to ensure that the voices of the many are never again drowned out by the arrogance of the few. The nation was still reeling from the seismic shift that had unfolded in the chamber. Jasmine Crockett's words had not only dismantled Attorney General Pan Pondi's facade, but it also ignited a movement that transcended politics. The country, people from all walks of life, found themselves inspired, energized, and emboldened by the courage and clarity Crockett displayed. The narrator's voice, steady and compelling, framed the moment. When one voice rises with truth, it awakens a chorus, and that chorus has the power to reshape a nation. Asterisk. In the days that followed, Crockett's speech became a rallying cry. Community leaders, activists, and everyday citizens echoed her message, demanding accountability and justice from those in power. The hashtags that had trended during the debate evolved into calls for action, with grassroots organizations mobilizing to support policies that reflected Crockett's vision of inclusive leadership. Meanwhile, Pan Pondi's camp struggled to regain footing. Attempts to spin the debate as a mere clash of personalities fell flat against the overwhelming public response. The Attorney General's dismissive tactics, once effective, now appeared out of touch and tone-deaf. Her silence in the aftermath spoke volumes, tacit acknowledgement that the old ways were no longer enough. The narrator's tone deepened. Arrogance may shield the powerful for a time, but truth has a way of breaking through, no matter how tightly it's guarded. Crockett's victory was not just symbolic, it was a blueprint for a new kind of leadership, one rooted in empathy, resilience, and an unyielding commitment to justice. Her approach resonated with a generation hungry for authenticity and change, a generation unwilling to accept the status quo. Political commentators hailed the debate as a turning point, a moment when the balance of power began to shift. Some framed it as the dawn of a new era, where leaders are held accountable not just by their titles but by their actions and integrity. The narrator's voice carried a note of cautious optimism in the crucible of conflict. New leaders emerge, leaders who understand that true power lies in service, not dominance. As the nation grappled with the implications of that night, Crockett remained focused on the work ahead. She knew that the applause and accolades were just the beginning. The real challenge was transforming words into action, promises into policies, and hope into reality. Her message to supporters was clear. This moment belongs to all of us. It's a call to stand up, speak out, and demand the leadership we deserve. The narrator's voice softened, inviting reflection. Leadership is not a destination, but a journey that requires courage, conviction, and an unwavering commitment to justice. The chamber lights may have dimmed, but the fire ignited by Jasmine Crockett's words continued to burn brightly, illuminating a path forward for a nation in search of true leadership. The narrator closed with a powerful call to action. Story's far from over. It is now up to each of us to carry the torch, to demand leaders who serve with integrity, and to ensure that the voices of the many are never again drowned out by the arrogance of the few. The chamber, long since emptied, but the echoes of Jasmine Crockett's words lingered, reverberating far beyond the marble walls and polished desks. What had begun as a heated debate had transformed into a defining moment, a clarion call for a new era of leadership grounded in truth, dignity, and unwavering commitment to justice. The narrator's voice, rich with solemnity and hope, set the tone. In the clash between arrogance and resilience, between entitlement and endurance, a new chapter was written. One voice, rising above the noise, had reminded a nation of its highest ideals. Jasmine Crockett's victory was not merely a personal triumph. It was a collective awakening. Across the country, people who had long felt marginalized, dismissed, or silenced found in her words a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations. Her courage became a beacon, illuminating the path toward a more inclusive and accountable democracy. The narrative of power had been challenged. Pan Pondi's polished arrogance, once seemingly invincible, had been exposed as brittle and hollow. Her dismissals and condescension, tactics that had long shielded her from accountability, were no match for Crockett's steadfast truth and unyielding dignity. The narrator's voice deepened with conviction. True leadership is not measured by titles or tenure, but by the courage to stand for what is right, even when the cost is high. In the days and weeks that followed, Crockett's words continued to inspire action. Grassroots movements gained momentum, fueled by a renewed sense of possibility and purpose. Communities organized, voices amplified, and the demand for justice grew louder and more insistent. Political leaders took notice. Some sought to align themselves with the rising tide of change, while others resisted, clinging to the old ways. But the momentum was undeniable. The debate had shifted the conversation, setting a new standard for what leadership must be. The narrator's tone softened, inviting reflection. The fight for justice is never easy. It is a path marked by struggle, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. But it is a path worth walking. Jasmine Crockett herself remained grounded, aware that the journey was far from over. The applause and accolades were affirmations, but the real work lay ahead in crafting policies that uplift, in holding power accountable, and in ensuring that every voice is heard. Her message to the nation was clear. This moment belongs to all of us. It is a call to action, a reminder that change is possible when we stand together with courage and conviction. The narrator's voice rose to a final crescendo. The chamber saw a debate. The nation witnessed a transformation. And history will remember the night when one voice refused to be silenced, reminding us all that belonging is not permission, it is a birthright. The screen faded to black, but the story was far from over. The torch had been passed, and the future awaited those brave enough to carry it forward.